Hello, everyone. Welcome to Men's Mental Health Ambassador Training. This is our first video. It's an introduction video. My name is Annika, and I'm one of the nurses assisting with this program.
Hello, everyone. This is Gail Zandy. I know that I've talked to all of you individually. It's very exciting for me to have you here listening to this today, and I'm just pumped to start this program. So welcome. We're thrilled that you volunteered and are willing to be part of this role, and we look forward to working with you over the next year in this program. So first, we're going to talk a little bit about the role of the ambassador, and I'm going to give a little history about how we got here. And I know I mentioned this to each of you before, but I'm just going to mention it again, and then we'll talk about the specific role you'll have in the program. But so the Calvin Nursing Program has been working with 4 different neighborhoods in Grand Rapids for 20 years. And our heart in that work is always to have residents really be the driver. So residents of those neighborhoods have told us what they felt the top health concern is and the solutions. So over that time, mental health has come up consistently for the last 20 years as one of the top 5 health concerns. And I would say we're hearing it more and more, particularly over the last 5 years. In 2009, we pulled women together first and asked them what they would like done to address depression and anxiety. And a common theme came up across the discussion groups we had in each neighborhood that women wanted support, a place where they could come together, get support and education in the form of support group. So we launched that program in partnership with the women and called it Women Supporting Women. That has been running now since 2010, and it still goes today. The program has been very successful. Women have loved it, and they've noticed a drop in symptoms of depression and anxiety through participation in it. But we found that when women were done with the program, they were telling each other, we should take what we're learning and sharing it with everybody we know, our neighbors, our friends, family members, people in our circles. And we felt like that was an amazing idea that they had. So we went out and got funding to pay them to do just that. And that started a mental health ambassador program that women led in the community. This program is running right now for the last 3 years. During that time, we also started to hear from men that it's great. You've been doing this program for women over the years, but when are you going to listen to men on this topic of depression and anxiety? So as you know, because each of you were a part of it, we launched focus groups about a year and a half ago-ish. And we asked men, pulled men together and had them describe what they felt like, how common depression and anxiety was, what the causes were, and what the solutions were. And each of you attended the results session, but as you know, one of the common themes that came up from the men was that they wanted peer support. They wanted to get support from other men in the community. And so that is what is driving this program today. We presented those results back to Spectrum Health because they funded that discussion, and Spectrum said they would like to fund your solution. So with this program is not our program, it's your program. And we want you to feel like you own it. And we want you to speak into it. We haven't done this before. This is the first time. And so we know we will have things we'll learn along the way. So as you're conducting this role of a mental health ambassador, I would love it if you would share with me at any time what you think could make it better, what you'd like to change, because this is a year of learning, and we're so excited you're willing to take a part of it to help shape this program as it goes forward. So that's the history. So what will be your role as an ambassador? So the first role is to really address stigma. So stigma are those misperceptions about mental health that are in our community or in our nation that are prevalent. So we'll be working as ambassadors to reduce stigma around mental health. We're going to have you initiate conversations about mental health topics with people in your spheres of influence. You're going to do a lot of listening, and that's a part of this role. Just listening is a very important part. I remember in those focus groups that we did, I remember one of the men who said, sometimes all I need is someone to listen to me. If I had someone who could listen to, I think I'd be able to manage my stress much better. So listening is an important part of this role. Sharing experiences, if you are comfortable sharing personal experiences that can make the person you're talking to feel better and feel like what they're going through is normal, that's great. So sharing personal experiences of things you do to manage stress or anxiety or depression, things you do to prevent it in your life, those are all very valuable things for others to hear. Offer encouragement. Sometimes you may have a conversation with someone within this role, and then they may reach out to you again. And your ability to be there to offer encouragement and support is part of this role. Recognizing the symptoms of depression and anxiety. We're going to talk about the symptoms today. You know many of them. We may share a few more that may not be quite as prevalent in terms of being known. So you will be able to recognize symptoms. You're going to do a lot of teaching about self-care and coping in this role. And we're going to go through some of those strategies in these videos that we have for you. And probably when we meet in person, we'll be able to go through them more and practice a little bit. So our heart is to really prevent depression and anxiety by teaching self-care and the importance of using healthy coping strategies. Know about existing mental health resources. We have a whole section on this so that if you need to make a referral to a resource in this community, you will know what's available. We will have brochures for you to hand out if you need to do that with anybody. You don't need to be the counselor or obviously we're not having you be, the role of a provider here, but it is important to know when you might need to make a referral. And we will tell you what referrals are out there so you will know how to make them if you need them. Recognize the mental health crisis situation. So after we do our training, we're going to see if you can enroll in one of two different trainings. It'll depend on your availability. So we'll make sure it fits for your life. But what if you have someone who is in crisis or someone who is suicidal? We want you to know what to do in that situation. So we're going to provide some training on how to handle crisis. Refer people to existing professional mental health resources as necessary. So I'd mentioned that already. We want you to know about the resources and be able to make a referral and to really help people view health holistically. Unfortunately, culturally, as Americans, we often do a lot of viewing of health as just the physical body. And as you know, health is so much more than that. It's emotional, social, spiritual. It is also mental health. So we want people to view health in all of those parts and see it's important to see health holistically.
Okay, so building off of that, we are going to cover a lot of those things, and we just wanted to start in this first video looking at some important concepts. So the first thing we want to talk about is a little bit about mental health stigma. So like Gail said, stigma are, negative perceptions, misconceptions, prejudicial attitudes, or stereotypes towards people with mental illness. So for an example, it might assume that a person with mental illness is crazy, bad, lazy, unmotivated, inferior, unpredictable, or dangerous. So those are some things that you might have heard or seen before, maybe even experienced. And ultimately, what goes with stigma is it can cause people to feel ashamed or guilty, to feel like a failure, and ultimately to not want to talk about their mental health problems. So this is an important thing to recognize in this work, that people might not be very inclined to share, or they might be resistant to receiving help because of the stigma that they're experiencing or that they feel. So just kind of something to kind of be aware of as you do this work. And
I'll add something to that too. I think, remember, one of our roles as ambassadors is to help reduce stigma. So that's helping people know it's okay to not be feeling okay. It's okay to be feeling down or discouraged or having anxious thoughts. If people feel like it's okay to talk about that, that's going to reduce the stigma associated with it. So that'll be one of your roles, to make sure people feel comfortable talking about this.
Mm-hmm. And something as simple as having conversations about mental health already is helping to reduce the stigma, showing that it's okay to talk about it. So that's definitely a huge thing. And oftentimes mental health stays hidden because people are uncomfortable, unsure, scared to talk about that part of their life. So along with that, a lot of mental health stigma comes from this understanding of what health is. So how we kind of define health overall is the ability to do what you want and need to do. So as some people shared, the ability to wake up and feel good about yourself, feel ready for, what you have in your day, feel like you can accomplish it to live well. And so there's multiple aspects to this. As a society, we focus mostly on the physical aspect of our health, but there's actually a lot of things that play into our overall health. So not just physical, but our mental health, which we're talking a lot about today, emotional health, spiritual health. Some other ideas were relational health, social health, and all of these play into each other and are impacted by each other. So we'll even talk a lot about the connection between physical health and mental health, but then also the other ones play into it as well. So along with this, people are often more comfortable sharing about their physical health. They're not embarrassed to tell you they have high blood pressure, or maybe they got sick with the flu. But it's far more difficult to open up about mental health challenges. So this can kind of lead to this unbalanced view of health. And so that's another part of that stigma, is teaching people that all aspects of health are important and deserve to be, shared and taken care of and supported. Anything to add to that? Okay.
Right. So one thing we're going to talk about today is this issue of being an active listener. So in our typical relationships that we have, I wouldn't say we're all probably always very good at active listening, because we're participating and we're sharing our view and our thoughts, and it goes back and forth like that. But in the role of an ambassador, at times you will have to shift away from that sort of communication to be an active listener. And that means you want to make sure that the other person feels valued and heard. That's a real key component of being an active listener. You really focus less on yourself, like sharing about how you feel about something, but really about listening. And you listen not only with your verbal words, but your nonverbals. So the things that you're doing non-verbally, like looking at someone, making sure you're not on your phone, making sure that you're really listening and they can see that you're listening. So you don't want to be crossing your arms and looking back this way. So just doing some things both verbally and non-verbally in a non-judgmental way to make sure that the person feels like you are really, really listening to what they're having to say.
So along with that, question asking is a huge component of this. So there's kind of two different types of questions. So you have close-ended questions that are questions that essentially can be answered with a yes or a no, or open-ended questions, which kind of invites people to share more and open up and to get to go beyond just the yes or no of a question. So I think a brief example would be, do you have kids? That's a yes or no, versus asking someone, tell me about your kids. And then that opens the door for them to get to maybe share something they like to do, or their ages or their names, that kind of thing. So just being mindful of trying to ask these questions that are inviting responses and encouraging people to share. So things like how or when or where, tell me about. Those are going to be ways to kind of engage with people. And then just something along with these questions, we want to be really careful with the use of why. When we ask why questions, it often causes people to feel defensive. So yeah, just that would be a word to kind of avoid in general in these situations, as our goal is to show people that they are being listened to, and that we care about what they have to say, and we're not passing judgment on anything they're saying.
Sometimes you can also ask questions that help to clarify that you're hearing someone correctly. So if someone is sharing something with you and you can say, it sounds like you're feeling frustrated about that situation, or it sounds like you're feeling concerned. Those are really good phrases to use to make sure you're understanding someone correctly. So that is also a good question. If you wonder, you want to make sure you're grasping what they're saying, or you can use it as just a strategy to let them know you're really listening. Again, that's another active listening strategy. Like, sounds like you're saying this. Am I hearing you correctly? That it can also be a very good question to ask to make the person feel like you're really listening.
So along with that, just a concept to kind of think about is advice giving. So this is a very individual, situation by situation kind of thing. There might be times when people come to you and they are seeking advice and they want you to speak into it. But we want to be really careful with how we give advice, or even if we do, even if we feel like it's even necessary. So I think one thing that can be really helpful is if you feel like this person could benefit from some form of information, whether that's a little education, if you want to share a coping strategy, even just phrasing it as, would it be okay if I shared something that's worked well for me, or is that okay if so just like asking that permission before, which shows that you're deferring to them and you're giving them control over it. It's not going to feel as much as if you're telling them what to do, if you're asking their permission first. Again, though, the focus is much more on listening than sharing, and then just picking and choosing where you feel like that they could benefit from some information.
Yeah, I'll just give another example to supplement that. Sometimes advice giving can be a real blocker for communication. For example, if you have someone who comes to you and is sharing frustrations with their boss and it's really stressing them out, and they share some situations about what's going on, and your response is, well, you should just go talk to your boss and take care of that. I think that would solve the situation. Suddenly that person feels like that conversation is done, and maybe a better response would be, sounds like you're really frustrated with your boss. Tell me more about that. Just allowing them to verbalize it. Or it sounds like you're concerned about that. Do you have any ideas what you think you could do to help resolve it? And then that puts it back on the person to process the situation and think about what they can do. This might be a little bit different than what we're used to, because in a lot of our relationships, we give advice to each other, which can be very valuable. And sometimes you may be in the situation to give advice, but sometimes the person just needs you to listen and be heard, and potentially come up with their own solution to it, because then it's owned by them much more than if you give them a solution that they're supposed to do, which would be something you would do. So just be thoughtful and careful about advice giving. Use it wisely. Make sure the person feels like they are listening, and try as best you can to have them come to the solution as well, so that they feel like they're on board with that solution. All right, the last thing we want to talk to you about is confidentiality. And I know each one of you understand the importance of this so well. In this role, being an ambassador, you're going to have people come to you and share some of their struggles or concerns, or really be looking for support. So you may be hearing stories that are hard, or really personal stories. And obviously, what would really hurt this program is if we took something that we heard and we shared it with someone else, and then it gets around. So obviously, we want to really convey to people when we're listening to them that thank you for trusting me to share your story with me. And I want you to know that this is going to be confidential, and it won't go anywhere past me. So those are good phrases to say to people. It makes them feel like they can trust you. And I know that if you were sharing something personal with someone else, you would want that trust extended and confidentiality extended to you as well. So please hold this very dearly to you. You will run into situations, particularly if you're having a conversation with someone off to the side, and maybe you have a family member that's close by. And after you're done with that conversation, you walk over to your family and they may say, hey, what were you talking about? What was wrong? It looked like they were really upset. Again, we may be tempted to share, but we want to be really thoughtful of this concept. And it could be like with your family member, just say, oh, I wish I could share it with you, but I promised this person I would keep it confidential because it's a very personal story to them. And I want them to be able to trust and know they can come to me. And not only does that protect that other person, but it also shows you to whoever you're telling that to, that they can trust you with something that is confidential to them. So this will come up. I guarantee it that people in your circles are going to want to know what you're talking to someone about. But it's so incredibly important that you follow this confidentiality very strictly and keep it, keep it confidential, whatever you're talking about. So, and it's okay to tell people that. I tell my ambassadors it's okay to share that with whoever they're talking to. Thank you for trusting me with this. I will keep this confidential.
And we will discuss that in a further video, or when we're together, what are the few unique situations where you are required to escalate, kind of as a mandated reporter, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I agree. Thank you, Ani, for sharing that. If someone is suicidal, for example, that is a time where safety trumps confidentiality every single day. So then you need to make a referral for help for them. So there are certain situations, and like Ani said, we'll come back to this, and I think we'll even hit it in some of the training you're going to get in that other area on what to do in a crisis, where when is it okay to break confidentiality? And that absolutely is a perfect example of when it's okay to break confidentiality if there's any sort of risk of harm that could happen and someone shares that with you, then we need to tell someone.
For the most part, though, will probably be not those situations.
Correct.
Okay, so we're going to do just a brief scenario example. Like anything in life, whether you're an athlete or a musician, or a cook, whatever it is, you get good at it by practicing. So we're going to try to show you a couple examples to get a feel for it, and we'll be practicing more scenarios in the coming sessions as well. So I am just going to be asking Gail about her weekend, and just see if you can kind of pick up on some things I'll do two different examples, and see if you can pick on some of the verbal and nonverbal things that either communicated that I was listening and cared about what she had to say, or the opposite. So, Gail, what are your plans for this weekend?
Oh, I'm heading up to go see my father tomorrow.
Oh, why are you going to see him?
Well, he's not been feeling well. His balance is really bad. So we're going to go up there to check on him and see. His health has been deteriorating.
Oh wow, yeah. Do you like seeing him?
Yes.
Hmm. Um, yeah, so how you're gonna be there for 2 days?
2 days or one day.
Okay, yeah, that'll be cool. Okay, so that's scenario one. We'll do this one more time. Gail, so tell me what your plans are for this weekend.
So I'm going to go seeing my father. He has not been feeling very well.
Oh, I'm so sorry to hear that. What's going on?
Well, about the last 5 years, his balance has been getting much worse. In fact, he's fallen probably 100 times over the last 5 years. And it's hard. He's 87 and his health is deteriorating. So he just needs a lot more support than he used to.
Yeah, wow, that sounds really hard. How have you been doing with all of this?
Yeah, it's been really hard. I mean, it's been hard on us, but it's harder on him. He just lost his license recently. He can't drive anymore. So now he feels a little bit more isolated at home. So he's been really discouraged by that.
I'm sorry that's going on.
Mm.
Okay, so we'll just stop there. We'll keep it pretty simple. But I'm sure it's very obvious the difference. So, well, I guess I'll have you answer. What were some things that I did in the first example that made you feel either welcome to share or unwelcome?
Well, in the beginning, when we were talking, I thought you were listening, but then you got distracted. You pulled on your phone, and I just felt like she doesn't really care about this. It just was a real clear nonverbal that you gave to me that you were distracted and had something else on your mind. So it made me want to share less. And then you started to ask some questions that were yes, no answers. And I just felt like I would just answer yes or no or with one word because I didn't really think you were engaged.
I don't know if anyone saw too, I threw in a why question there of, why would you go see him kind of thing. Um, so yeah, little things, not making eye contact. I think even just tone, it's kind of a hard thing to um, explicitly like say, but I think when you hear it, you can just tell. You can tell if someone's engaged even by the tone that they're using. Okay, so how about the second one? What in the second scenario made you feel maybe more comfortable to share?
Yeah, so I knew you were engaged. You were looking at me. You were not distracted by anything else. And your whole demeanor changed. I felt like you were leaning into me more, really listening. And even your questions were better questions, not only about you wanted to hear about it, you asked questions where I could elaborate. And you even recognized the fact that this is really hard. Like, how are you feeling related to this? How's that making you feel? And I could share how I was feeling and how I felt like my dad was feeling. So it really felt like you cared.
Yeah, so just to review, for the nonverbal things, so things like eye contact, nodding, or even some just like, little words, yeah, okay. Those are the kind of things that show people you're listening. Not having distractions, no phones. Phones can be really detrimental to connecting. Um, and then verbally too, being careful about your tone, asking those open-ended questions, encouraging people to share how they're feeling, that kind of thing. Anything to add, Mom?
No, I think in this first session, we're just kind of setting the groundwork, what this program is about and how important it is to listen. Listening is a really important role for the ambassador, and sometimes that is undervalued, unfortunately, but it's very valued in this role to be a good listener. Because again, the men's voices ring in my head where people say, sometimes all I needed was someone to listen to me. And so we want to listen well. So I think we just encourage you after this section, practice this a little bit in your life with, family members or friends. Practice using words that engage them and let them know you're listening. Kind of evaluate what you think you're doing well and what you're not doing well. Practice using nonverbal techniques too that really show that you're engaged. And practice using words, even phrases like, thank you so much for sharing that with me when someone shares something personal with you. It lets them know that you listen and you value them. So we practice a little bit here, but now we'd love you to go out and practice just in your life. It will build this skill so that when you launch into this role, you'll even be that much more ready.
Yep, and moving forward, we're going to be giving a lot more information and practical tools and ideas and different things for this role. But like she said, the foundation of this is being a good listener, showing people you care, creating space for people to share about their lives. So if nothing else, if you just did that, you still would be doing good work. And so we just can't like stress this aspect of it enough. It's really kind of the foundation of this role.
Yeah, and I'll just say one more thing before we wrap up this first video, but go easy on yourself. I mean, whenever you're practicing, remember you're practicing and you may not always get it right. And you may say something, that you would thought later, well, I could have said that differently, or you may have used a nonverbal that wasn't as effective. That's okay. We're all learning together. I learn something about this every day. So go easy on yourself. But this is just that encouragement to really start thinking about what you're saying and how you're saying it and how you can make someone else feel like you are really listening and you're engaged in that conversation. So start practicing, give yourself a lot of grace. and you'll get better at it. It's just the way it goes when we practice something. All right. So thank you. We will be back again shortly with the second session, but we wanted to start you off with this foundation about what this is about and how important it is to do active listening. And the next session will be on signs and symptoms of depression and anxiety. See you soon.